Right. Riverside is going well. A lot of effort. I think people are putting forth effort to.
Heavy users came, and it obviously became so addicted that it became their major expense, and so they became destitute and turned to collecting scrap to sell. Collecting junk. So
there you are.
So it's basically synonymous with homeless.
Mm. So many of these.
That'd be an interesting parallel, though, Dr. Joe, and mental health stigmas too. I mean, these implicit, like, crazy person, right? Well, they're not a crazy person. It could be an interesting blending of ideas with this implicit idea, right? This subconscious thought process that, I'm very aware of mental health issues and blah, 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 but then you go home and that person's crazy, and you just, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. Well, Mark, I think that's a problem with our society, period. When you think about, the work and efforts around diversity and inclusion, it goes far beyond what we are likely going to talk about tonight, which is current state in America. And we think about how many people want to equate, who I am and the color of my skin to poverty. Black people aren't all impoverished, and that is the same as what you're saying, and people coming up with their own terms, their own thoughts about populations of people who don't look like them, act like them, seem like them. So they're going to devalue them and use terms that are derogatory, as you just described.
Yes, and this is part of what we're going to talk about tonight.
Is that their I am, Dr. Joe?
Well, then unfortunately it is, but I am, you don't have to like it, but you got to try to understand where people are coming from. It doesn't mean we have to like it or condone it.
Looks like we have commercials tonight. Did you see that note?
We have the 15-minute and 45 mark.
Yeah, so we have 2 commercial breaks tonight, Angela, that I will be leading us into at about 15 minutes and then at 45 minutes. Okay. So other than that, we'll be chatting. And the commercial break is usually about a minute. So Facebook Live will still be going. So that gives them extra content. And we are live on Facebook right now. So
otherwise, muggy, hazy, the low near 70. Tomorrow, clouds and some sun at times. As the showers move away from the Cape in the morning, an onshore breeze will keep all of our coastline cooler, reaching the low to mid-80s well inland. Tomorrow night, clearing, comfortable, the low 67. Saturday, a good deal of sunshine, a high 87, 80 at the beaches. Sunday, some sun will give way to more clouds, a shower or two, especially later, with the humidity making another return, a high of 82. And with that humidity, we'll keep a distant eye on tropical storm Isaias, now moving toward the Bahamas over the next day or so. We'll approach Florida and then move up along the eastern seaboard, and that can bring at least heavy rain to southern New England by later Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. For W8TD, I'm meteorologist Rob Gilman.
How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Shrand.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dr. Joe.
Whoa, Mark.
I wasn't fully cleared.
You were not. We can just chalk that up to like bad internet. Do you want
bad internet, running straight from the baseball field? There's a lot of factors involved right there.
Yeah, you were at the baseball field. So this is one of your kids is playing. How's that going?
Great. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Everybody down there's got a mask on and no sharing of equipment, but we're playing baseball, so that's a really positive thing. And we're always looking for positive things right now, aren't we?
Well, that's very true. And Tom, you're here tonight too. Good to see you. Don't forget to unmute.
Good to see you, Dr. Joe.
Yeah, we are. Things going all right with you?
It's been all right, but I think for many, it's been choppy, a little rough this past week, especially. As well, as is the case with most of us, most of our conversations have been taking place online.
Yeah.
And there's been a rise in armchair future casters, and a lot of them eager for conflict.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
The us versus them is in full swing. The refusal to see good in any cause that isn't explicitly yours. It worries me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad that you brought up what a great segue for our guest tonight. We have an incredible guest tonight, folks. And we're going to be talking about things that really need to be addressed. You know, there's so much focus on COVID, but there's something else going on in the world right now that we really need to address. Angela Crutchfield Callahan is here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you. Tom, can you give us a little bit of background on Angela?
Oh, absolutely. So, our guest, Angela Callahan, is the owner of Peace Unlimited, LLC, an executive leadership coaching, lifestyle coaching, and transformational HR consulting practice, offering leadership coaching, transformational HR best practice consultation. Ms. Callahan is also Ms. Callahan has also served as Vice Chancellor for Talent and Chief Diversity Officer for the University of Mass Dartmouth, and currently serves as Consultant Diversity Inclusion Director for Riverside Community Care in Boston. Dr. Joe.
Sound familiar? And
yes,
and this is how I got to meet Angela when she was brought on to Riverside Community Care to really help our organization with our diversity and inclusion and things that honestly I think a lot of people thought we would, doing. And one of my great first moments with Angela. Can I just tell them?
You absolutely can, Dr. Joe.
Thank you.
If you want to.
I do, because it was really wonderful to even see how even I am learning from Angela. So we have our leadership meeting pretty much every Thursday now. And, it's, 15, 20, 25 folks who are in the vice president roles and different things at Riverside. And Angela is introducing herself and really talking about inclusion and diversity and some of the real challenge that we have. And there I am, and I say, well, yeah, that's true. But look at this picture that we have right here. We have more women in leadership than men. And Angela called me on it. And I was so grateful, right? Because it was not.
And to add to Dr. Joe's description of the scenario, it was similar to how we are on this screen right now, with the exception of two other people of color. I'm the only Black face on the screen, right, talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion and the need for change at the most senior leadership level in this organization. And Dr. Joe asked a question right after he made that statement. Look at all the women, and I let him finish. And you all know Dr.
You let
Joe.
me finish.
I let him finish, and I sat just like this, right, Dr. Joe? Until he finished, and I said, "Well, Dr. Joe, because he said he wanted to do things. What can we do? I want, what can we do?" After he made that statement, so I made sure I went to his question, and I said, "You ask, what can we do? How about I start with what you should not do?"
Yes.
Right, and specifically walk down that path, equating what is a demonstration of a level of diversity and inclusion, which is more women, is not the appropriate response in dealing with the current state in America and what has happened within the Black community far too long, based on the undercurrent of systemic racism that our country has been founded upon. So it was important that in that setting and in that moment, everyone heard that, because that is how extreme our thoughts have to be right now because of where we are and the needed change that must take place, period. We have to fix this in our organizations, and it takes conversation, but it's going to also take action.
Yeah. And I tell you, Angela, I'm getting goosebumps just hearing you talk like this, because it is so true. And honestly, folks, we have to look at these things. I mean, I thought I was saying something, and Angela absolutely was right. Is that no, that's not where the issue. It's like saying Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Guys, it's happening right now. And the reason I really wanted Angela here tonight was not only to educate us and to help us learn about ourselves and what we can do, but also to recognize that I don't want this to be second page of the paper. It, it's going out, George Floyd was happening, was front page, and then COVID took over again. We cannot let this be dismissed. We can't, we got to keep it in focus. And that's why I wanted Angela here tonight. So.
Dr. Joe, how did you feel on that call when Angela said that?
You know what I said? I said, I'm so glad you're here. That's what I said. I'm so glad you're here. Because,
yeah, he did.
Because I need to hear that. I need to be educated. We're at this point in our culture, and I mean, this is why when Tom was introducing this as well, about the anger that's going on, the sense if you're not on my side, I don't want to hear about it. But this is something that my friend Kenny and Nancy was speaking about weeks ago from Zoom, about what it was like growing up as people of color. And this is part of why I want the Dr. Joe Show to be part of this change. It's an honor. So, what can you tell us, Angela?
Well, I'll start to tag on to what you just said. Mark, you don't know you well, but I had an opportunity to look at a couple of your previous shows, and I really appreciate your segue during the conversation that you all were having about white privilege a few weeks back. How you, and I want to talk a little bit more about that as well, but this specific point that you transitioned back in that dialogue about Joe and Zoom and as kids back in the 70s, and you said it's been 50 plus some odd years, if I remember correctly, and why are we not there yet? We've never been there. That's the problem. There have been pockets of goodness, like what Joe described with his Zoom younger colleagues back in that very insular world that was created in that Zoom cast and on that set, but that may not have been fully reflective of the experiences and the world for some of those young people of color outside of that bubble, right? And I'm sure, and I didn't watch the full episode with your reunion group, but I'm sure they gave a clear depiction of the life path that they've been on that was probably far different than someone would have ever thought of young people who were, come on and Zoom, come on and Zoom, come on, right? Very different life outside of there, right? Yeah. So understanding that we've never been there is a first step, and really understanding and learning and educating ourselves to raise awareness. And that discomfort is going to come for people. And Joe, during that same conversation, you talked about, you gave an example, and I'm going to try not to call you out, but I'm going to have to. I'm sorry, Joe. You use the example of toilet paper, right? And going into a store and toilet paper not being available. Very, very, very accurate depiction of experience and how that time frame when things were not available, or when we've had to all start standing outside in line to go in the store, that put us all on common ground, right? But there was a slight little bit in there that kind of bothered me a little bit, that I need to say to you. It almost, as you were going in a good place, until it felt like you were equating the experience of not having access to the toilet paper to more of a poverty experience, meaning, you know, as a person with white privilege, it's like we're the haves and you're the have-nots. And that's not always necessarily the case. And equating, which is what we were talking about before we started the show tonight, equating poverty to the Black community is wrong. Mm-hmm. And that is what I got out of that tiny little bit, which speaks to what I've been trying to share with people. You've got to stop and think. What is your intent in what you're saying? What are the behavioral choices? Joe, you might remember this from my session. And then the impact. We judge ourselves by our intent and others judge us by impact. So you got to go back and take the feedback and make different choices so that we can make sure that the impact we're trying to have. I got your point, Joe, because I'm going to think through it, but not everybody is going to always get your point. Right. So it's about really taking the time to think about what is my intent in what I'm saying, because our words have power. What am I trying to say here? And what behavioral choices should I make to ensure I'm going to have the right impact?
You know, I appreciate once again you educating me on this. At this point, we have an impact from our sponsors, and I know what their intent is. Their intent is to tell us what's going on. So don't go away, folks. We will be right back with Angela Callahan. Dr. Joe Show will be right back. Ben, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you.
Your special event deserves BC Tent and Awning.
That's great. That was the show that we were doing.
There's BC Tent and Awning.
Which show was that? That wasn't the Zoom Kids. That was
the week before. I think.
Who was it?
I think that was the week before with Lisa Schumett.
With Lisa, right. And we brought her on because she was doing a show. She'd written a book about always and never. You know, the things you always do and never do. And Angela, this is so helpful for me because I pride myself on being insightful, and the impact also I need to look at. And just by coincidence, impact starts with an I am. You know, so we're always doing the best we can, but that doesn't mean we have to like it, and it certainly doesn't mean that we don't change. That's the thing, and it's interesting because I don't usually talk this much during this show, so I got to look at that too.
It's because I'm here. I have an influence on Dr. Joe, everybody.
You know.
He's been very excited for the show, I got to tell you, and he's been talking about a lot about you. I think you've made a huge impact in his life. Really.
Well, you know what? I appreciate that because that's what I want. For you know, a part of what you probably read in my bio, I want my tongue to be the pen of a ready writer. That's based on my spiritual foundation, and that's important to me. So I want what I say and what I do to impact and influence people in the right way and in a positive way. So I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So can we also talk a little bit about how, maybe, you know, self-evident, but how you got into this? Because that would be really interesting, I think, for folks to know about your own story, if it's okay with you, and talk a little bit about, you know, how you have made this a mission.
Absolutely. You want to do that now?
As soon as we get back on the air, we're going to do that. So
I would also love to spend some time to talk about the function of the
Valuable
term calling
videos
out,
to help guide
because I
you.
feel like that's
Remember,
something that's very
it's always best to be
misunderstood.
proactive so you aren't forced to be reactive.
that was Mark's commercial.
Sorry.
As he co-hosts The Dr. Joe Show on 95.9 WATD.
That's you, Mark. Awesome.
And you are back. I got a little feedback on that one. We are back. We're diving deep here, folks. So you know, sit down, relax, and open up your mind, because this is a great one. And Dr. Joe is very excited for this guest, and we are just scratching the surface. So take it away, Dr. Joe.
Yeah, we have Angela Callahan here, who's someone who I met recently. And Angela, I wanted, you know, can you talk a little bit about how you got into this field in general and your own pathway and story?
Yeah, happy to share. It was back in 1970. Okay, I'm sorry. I like to have fun, Joe. I'm sorry.
No, when I remember when I was a little, right.
So, I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. And that literally is the start of my life and my experience and the setup for what I do right now. And every aspect of my journey along the way has equipped me to do the work that I do right now. As a transformational HR professional focused on, organizational effectiveness, organizational change, training and development, and most passionately, diversity, equity, and inclusion as an undercurrent to all of those things. We got to do what we do in a fair and equitable way. But going back to my upbringing, being raised in Memphis, Tennessee, you have a lot of experiences that shape who you become ultimately. And if any of my old Mitchell High School friends who are watching this via live on Facebook, they will probably remember this scenario. One of the first experiences, actually, I'm going to go back before high school. I'm going to go all the way back to my younger years growing up. Again, our experiences, and mine especially, it effectively helps you to address these types of things that you deal with. So I remember growing up in Memphis, we would always go visit my grandmother. My grandmother lived in Tunica, Mississippi, right? Tunica, Mississippi at one point was known as one of the poorest county in the nation at one point. And that's, where my family is originally from, down in that area. And we would always go visit. We go, the summers, we spend summers there. We'd go, visit on Friday night. That was a common practice for us, driving down the highway in our station wagon, going to visit my grandmother. And the one thing I could never understand is why all of my Black cousins attended the all-Black public high school, and all of the white kids in Tunica attended a separate all-white high school. I didn't get that. I wasn't processing that as a child, but it sticks out. It's been in my mind since then, clearly, because I'm far from the age that I was when I noticed that this was something that happened. And ultimately, the white students ended up going to a private school that was built just for the white students in Tunica, Mississippi. I didn't understand why my grandmother would go spend her days all day and into the early evening at sometimes, I'm sure, caring for a white family. Didn't get all of those things, but those things have always been, playing in my head, and seeing and knowing the experiences that we have had as a culture, and specifically even as a family. Fast forward, we get to high school. I will never forget this day. This was a watershed moment for me, and it changed the trajectory of my life and my career path. My high school had us visit, at the time it was called Memphis State University, now known as the University of Memphis. But at the time, Memphis State University, and this was in the year of 1988. We graduated in 1989. So this was roughly 88, 89-ish window of time. And we went for a visit to the campus. And I'll never forget this. There was a room where they wanted all of the students to go in as a group. Your group would go in, and we were one of the few all Black groups there. And I recall a group going in ahead of us, and they were invited into the room by student representatives who said to them, welcome, and put your name on the board. And they gave this wonderful description of what they were to do and engage them. And they would go in one door and go out the other door. And then Mitchell High School, here we come. We come through the room, through the door and into the room, and we were 100% ignored. Not one of those young ladies representing Memphis State University acknowledged this group from Mitchell High School. We didn't know what to do. We're looking around, okay, well, I guess we're supposed to put our names up. We're supposed to do something. So we figured out what to do in our little 5 to 10 minutes in this room, and we're exiting. And my mind, even back then, was always processing, because clearly, if I remember this, it was processing. And I was one of the last ones to exit from this room. And I'm looking back and I noticed the next group comes in behind us. Welcome, you guys. Come on in. We want you to put your information on the board. Memphis State is one of the greatest places to be, and goes on and on. And I'm literally walking out almost in slow motion. And the rest of the group, I don't think any of them thought about it. They probably didn't. But that was a watershed moment for me. And I said, from that day on, I would never walk into a room and be ignored. Never, because of the color of my skin. And I put forth great effort to make sure of that. Let's fast forward even more. I made a decision after I moved from Tennessee, moved to California, lived in California for 10 years. And during my time of living in California, I ultimately made a decision, a lot of things, too much to go into. We could talk for hours about all of my life experiences, but I made a decision that I wanted to do something different. And I had seen a person at a seminar and I said, she's doing what I want to do. It was a training class. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. So I became certified, went through the process of connecting with, at the time, National Seminars Group, flew to Kansas City, went through their whole certification process. But during that certification process, another watershed moment, the instructor said to me, as a part of the whole dialogue and getting us ready, and she talked to me directly in this setting with other people. And by the way, I was the only Black person there. And she said, well, I'll just be honest with you, Angela, for you in this industry and this work as a public speaker, it's going to be very difficult for you. And of course, my inquisitive mind says, why? She said, you got 3 strikes against you. You're young, you're Black, and you're female. You'll never be successful and you'll never be credible. Never again would I accept that as something as factual about who I am and what I bring to the table. So those examples are scenarios and situations that have shaped who I am. So I've put forth great effort to ensure that, when people want to say, oh, where are you from? And I say, oh, I'm from Memphis. Oh, I knew I heard something in your voice. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And I will tell people that. No, you didn't hear anything in my voice to indicate that I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. So please don't do that to me, right? So you've got to find that for yourself to be able to effectively do whatever it is you are called to do in life. And I know I'm called to do what I do in this life, and that's to drive impact and influence people, right? So for me, being up front, speaking and training and helping people find the path and change, that's what I'm all about. And for me, that meant transformational HR. So I fell into the HR space because of that. Started off doing theater and singing and doing all of those things. So I knew I wanted to do something that kept me out front because I just like to do that. I call myself an introverted extrovert. And my sister, one of them, laughed at me the other day. She's like, what is that? I'm really an introvert. I really am. I'm very much to myself. I enjoy when I'm by myself, I'm by myself. My mother will even tell you, she used to always, say I'm sitting in the corner reading a book while everybody's doing everything else, because that was just me. But I have to be extroverted to do this work. But if you weren't talking to me today, I would sit here and just sit and not say a word. But I have honed those skills, and for some odd reason, things come to me that I'm able to share to influence and help people see things differently. And that is kind of the experience that you've had with me, Dr. Joe. So, I've worked in different industries, healthcare, higher ed, aerospace and defense. I've been in different companies. I've traveled this country doing trainings and seminars, and I've built my education. I'm currently a doctoral candidate. And what's crazy about all that goodness, I had to do it so that I'm always a step ahead of everybody else, because I'm a Black female. And the value is never placed upon us as Black women in the work that we do. And people devalue what we do and position us as less than. And it's not acceptable, which is a clear reflection of a lot of what we're talking about and trying to deal with today. So I have the education, I have the experience, I have all of those things that I need to do this work and do this work well.
Do you have like a curriculum that you utilize when you walk into an organization, or do you just kind of play off the energy of what the audience has for you?
I customize for specific audiences. For example, with Riverside, that Dr. Joe is very familiar with, we are currently focused in on a listening and learning process. and building out a long-term sustainable diversity and inclusion plan is really the priority for me. But in the short term, the interim, post the unfortunate, tragic, inhumane death of George Floyd, we had to expedite the effort and to really take a different path. For me, diversity and inclusion, we have to have a broad lens. I can't have the narrow lens of just my view of me, Angela, a Black female in America. That's important for me to have that. However, to do diversity and inclusion work effectively, you have to have a broader lens that is inclusive of all. And also being inclusive, not at the expense of excluding anyone. You know, I can't exclude the three of you as white men in America in trying to create a more diverse and inclusive environment, because then that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. I need to educate you and make sure you understand that what you do is that negatively impacts. So we customize, for me, I customize things based on the needs of the organization. Much of it is foundationally the same. And a lot of what I build my work on in this diversity and inclusion space is built on a model that I use that I call the LEPAS, L-E-P-A-S model, which is a very simple model of listening, educating, planning, acting, and sustaining. When you get those items in order and you walk through it effectively, you can see positive change. And that first thing is listening. Right now, just listen. Be quiet and listen in the workplace so that you can understand what the true issues are. So when someone walks in the door of your organization and they say, I come in this place and work every single day, and I feel just like George Floyd laying on that ground with a white man's knee in my neck. When they say that, what are you going to do with that? Because that's probably going to knock you off your feet, because you're not going to know what to do with that. You've got to be able to take that in, commit to a level of understanding and empathy that says, I saw that, I felt that, it was inhumane and it was wrong. But Angela, I need you to help me understand what that means here in our organization when you say that, so that I can understand better the things that we should do differently in the organization. Then that gives me opportunity for dialogue, right? And that raises your awareness, and that gives you opportunity to listen. It gives you opportunity to educate yourself and to get more information out of me. So the model it hinges on a focus of change efforts or change planning to move things forward.
And do you find that there are different sort of personality types, or people, some are responsive, some are resistant, some are in denial? I mean, how do you manage
in this current state, Dr. Joe, the main thing that I'm seeing is a lot of discomfort, a lot of guilt. I think that people are processing differently now than ever before, because they are hearing what is being said. And the discomfort for many of them is they are not comfortable with embracing this undercurrent term that is truth about our country, that many people are racist. And that's a heavy word for people to take in. To be called a racist, what is the first thing someone is going to say? I'm not a racist. Why would you call me that? So terms are important. So it's not about calling someone a racist. It's about calling out their behavior and giving the appropriate feedback so that they can make adjustments and changes. But you have to be open to that feedback. You have to know that there is truth to white privilege, that there is truth to microaggressions, that there is truth to racial profiling. There is truth to all of these things that show up as discriminatory practices that then funnel into injustices that we have seen for far too long. And that number one injustice on the list started many years ago with slavery. What we see at current state in the workplace with disparate treatment in the workplace. We see it with the microaggressions. We see it with the unconscious bias. We see all of these things still alive and well today. I can't do anything when it comes to the reform and the changes needed in the justice system. I can't do anything with healthcare disparities. I don't plug and play in that space, but I do plug and play with organizational redesign, organizational effectiveness, what we do in our businesses that should and could be done differently. That is important.
And can you talk about microaggression? Because some people may not really understand what that is.
That's always an interesting question, because so many people demonstrate microaggressions literally day in and day out. And so it's kind of funny to me when I hear people say, well, I don't exactly know what microaggressions, what is that all about? Microaggressions are basically going to be those brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, environmental things that we say that will negatively impact a person, creating hostility, creating a derogatory experience for someone else. It could be something as simple as you have a Latino person in the workplace, and you as a white male, you're having a conversation about going on vacation, and you make a statement, well, you should be used to that hot weather, right? You're used to that kind of hot weather. And that person is sitting there saying, what? And what does that mean? I was born in New York. And equating certain things to certain populations of people and making them feel a certain way by saying those things that you say that are negative, prejudicial slights and insults towards an individual. And it happens all the time. So when you see people react, I told you I did a little acting. So when you see people do something like I'm going to demonstrate, when you see this happen and you say something and they do, you got to know that that's a process that's happening in that moment. And if you don't do anything else but observe that gives you opportunity to pause and say, okay, let me think. What did I just say? And how do I need to go back and say that differently? Start by asking, I'm sorry, did I say something wrong? Please help me understand, because I don't want to be wrong. But be careful with that too, because right now, don't make the one Black person on your team or the person of color on your team the representative for the entire population, because they don't want to do that. I'm just telling you. And if any of them are watching, they'll note and tell you, yep, Angela, tell them stop doing that. Don't make me the spokesperson. However, you've got to find a way, Dr. Joe, all of us, to navigate those moments when they do happen. And if you see it with others, you got to say something. That's what it means to be an ally. You see and you observe what's happening to another person, and another person is treating someone in a certain way. You got to confront that person and tell them that was wrong what you just said, or that was wrong that you just did. I'll give you a quick example. I saw a story on the other night, and I can't remember what it was on. I watch so much right now, documentaries and things, but I think it was a minister who said when he started working through this for himself was a day when he's standing outside, he's doing something outside, and and he looks up and he sees a man driving by in a very nice car, like a Mercedes or something, and it's a Black man. And he said when he realized he had a problem was in that moment, that guy drives by and he says, I wonder how he's driving that car. Did you feel that one, Thomas? I saw that reaction.
Yeah. That's a step above the well-spoken thing.
Exactly. You're so articulate. We've got to think about it. It's a thought. It's thinking. If you're going to drive change, you got to think and say, what am I really saying or doing that's reflective of me standing on the shoulders of the forefathers of this country who founded this country on racism? Because you are, and you don't even see it and realize it. So having this kind of dialogue is the first step. And don't get me wrong, this is not the only step. Notice I said first, because there has to be action that takes place afterward. Some of you may lose some friends. Some of you may have to cut some people out of your life because you know that they are representative of racist behavior that is no longer acceptable for you if you are at that place of true change. You may have to lose some clients. Some leaders may need to step down to give opportunity for someone else to get into a leadership chair that they are far more capable of holding down than that person that's in that chair. So those are those extreme radical things that we need to start seeing. And we're seeing a little bit of it, but until we start seeing that, we're not going to see the necessary change to end racism in our organizations.
And how do we manage the resistance to this? Because there is going to be resistance to this change.
It is going to be resistance, and it's going to have to be, as it comes. You got to be able to to deal with it. If you have, again, you're in a healthcare organization, and you have patients who are, let's say, in long-term care or whatever, or not even long-term care. You have patients who come in who are negative and nasty towards all the people of color who work there. They need to get services somewhere else, because you're taking a stance as an organization and saying, that's not acceptable here. It's not acceptable here. Now, will that require you, would that look like a loss for you at times? Absolutely. But the long-term gain is going to be so much more. It's going to be so much more for you, because you'll get it right. And now don't get me wrong. Let me make this clear too, because I think a lot of people have taken what people are trying to help others understand over the years, and especially now. I am not saying that, I'm going to put on my Oprah voice that all the Black people want to be in all the leadership roles. I'm not saying that, right? But I am saying that we've got to make sure that we are creating true equitable processes in all that we're doing. If you're hiring people, make sure that you're looking at all the managers are looking at all the resumes and not throwing out Shaquita Jackson because of her name, when Shaquita may have more experience, more education than Dick Jones, right? And Dick Jones gets the job, and Shaquita Jackson, she doesn't, and she has to go work as a clerk somewhere when she's management material, right? So it's a lot. This is a lot, you guys. It's a lot that needs to change in the workplace. A lot. Am I too much for you guys? I know you guys.
This is your hour. My question is, so where does our responsibility for those people that we're meant to cut off begin and end? Because I'm always worried about leaving people in a bubble. And I've been friends with people who, by modern standards, I suppose would be racist, who it'd be, I suppose, more obvious for you, Angela, in dealing with them. But, if it's just me and them in the room, they'll joke and then I'd say be polite in their dealings with people of other races. But subconsciously, they might not even know it, but still support systemic racism, thinking well, they shouldn't be rioting, stuff like that. Without moderate voices around them, what's the fate of them if we were to cut them out? Do we leave them with some sort of resources so that if they want to educate themselves, they will?
Yeah, Tom, you have to become the voice, right? If you are educating yourself, you're taking in new, I've put together a whole packet of resources for people to leverage. If you are educating yourself, and if you are doing what I call the HEART change for this HARD change that we're driving, and you are ready and you are in that seat of change, and you are now the voice. You got to be that voice. So when I say some of your friends may need to go, not after you give, an opportunity to try and help them understand. I think you're absolutely right. Cutting people off without at least giving some nuggets of gold to help them try and be better and try to change. I think that's, important to do. But how long do you keep trying to do that? That's your choice. That's your call. But you have to know that your communication of what is no longer tolerated is what you have to say to them. You know what? If it's between you and Dr. Joe, let's say Dr. Joe regularly says certain disparate comments that are no longer acceptable for you. What are you going to say to Dr. Joe? Let's role play right now, Tom. What are you going to say to Dr. Joe?
Dr. Joe, this pattern of vilification, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, the way you've been so gung-ho with things like anti use of force, and yet now suddenly you're seeing people getting kidnapped but in unmarked vans by plainclothes officers, and now it's, well, they should behave. This weird about face is very strange, and I'm not a mind reader, but maybe a little bit telling. So I don't know. Maybe take a look in the mirror. We're on public radio, so I'll cut it off there. But
yeah, so it's being able to do just that. How you can't control you, Dr. Joe. I've noticed you've said that a few times. I got to look up at my notes on my screen. I've heard you say
no one, you influence
where you talked about change.
Yes,
you can't change Dr. Joe, but you can give input and try and influence Dr. Joe to make a shift and make a change. It's about that influence that has to be core for you. And I think until we can do that, we won't again see the needed change long term and the sustainable change. That's what's important.
And we have to change a little bit right now. Because the small change can have a big effect. You control no one, you influence everyone. And our sponsors definitely influence us. That's so right. Ben, if you can make that small change, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Do you have a step?
That felt pretty good.
Great.
Because I'm seeing it happen with the C word, that beloved C word, commie. Because, you know, there's commie. Because Black Lives Matter, the organization, you know, there are people who are in the leadership of that, you know, say that they are, quote, trained Marxists, which, you know, fine, that's not illegal. The Black Lives Matter movements, I'd say, transcends the organization. And people say, like, well, why are you aligning with Marxists? It's like, well, what are you doing? This is the largest platform. And look, as someone on the spectrum, you know, I could have my own little spiel about Autism Speaks. You know, I don't think a monolith organization is necessarily helpful, but it's what's there. Mm-hmm. Until you come up with something better, yeah, the quote Marxists are doing a better job than you. Well, are you going to side with commies, really? No matter what the enemy, you're going to side with commies? The federal government did that in World War II. So who are you?
Angela, what do you say to that? What percentage of people who support the movement really even know what Thomas is talking about? That is
probably not many. In the movements, what they care about is Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Right. No, I would venture to say probably not many. I don't even know, to be honest with you. So, you know, I think it's a bigger issue when you look at it from the movement perspective. And I think, you know, how I understand the whole Black Lives organization and movement to be is really the response to the Trayvon Martin case, which was the launch of the Black Lives Matter organization. And you know, aspects of that organization I may not be as familiar with, but I definitely know the intent. And I definitely see how the mantle has kind of been picked up, and that has kind of become that voice.
Remember, it's always best to be proactive so you aren't forced to be reactive.
Mark Stiles can also be heard every Thursday night at 8 o'clock as he co-hosts The Dr. Joe Show on 95.9 WATD.
Indeed, we had an interesting off-air conversation about Black Lives Matter, and I'd love to continue that dialogue if we can, Angela.
Okay.
So Thomas was talking about the Black Lives Matter movement has taken on a huge benefit to our culture, really. But we were talking about the actual organization that started in 2016. And we're wondering, you know, do you have to necessarily support the initial the initial understanding of and the website, right? The 501c3, the actual organization, capital B, Black Lives Matter, to support Black lives? Or can you support Black lives and not necessarily support all of what the initial intent of this not-for-profit organization that started supports?
Okay, so I think we probably need to have some clarification on certain things, because what I'm familiar with as Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013, as I said, in response to the killing of, or the actual acquittal of the person who killed Trayvon Martin. And the three young ladies who started that are equating the work that they do and what they launched to, they're equating it to how many people viewed the NAACP, and are viewing it as a modern day movement from that perspective. And that is the lens that I come from when I understand and know and talk about Black Lives Matter, to help people be able to dock it into a movement and an organization, so that they are not finding creative ways to take offense to the statement that Black Lives Matter. Because that helps people, I think, understand that it's a movement. And of course, all lives matter. We all know that. But all lives truly don't matter until all Black lives matter as well. You know, if truth be told, I heard one commentator say, you know, Black lives have never been full lives in America. Period. Let's just be real, right? And when we acknowledge that and deal with all of those undercurrents, that is the focus. And I think we lose focus when we get caught up in these sidebar conversations about things that do not reflect that which was the origin of an organization such as Black Lives Matter, and their intent, which is focused on intervening and addressing supremacy and violence inflicted upon the Black community by the legal system. Literally, that is how they started this whole thing. So we've got to not get sidetracked, because I think when we get sidetracked, we lose focus on really what this whole thing is all about. And that is ridding our country of this foundational current that has been here for far too long, since the inception of our country, you know, the racism.
And I'm thinking that I wasn't there, but I feel like this must be the same kind of sidetracking and sticking point that happens back in during the SNCC and Black Panther movements with like people like Fred Hampton, where he was vilified. People just thought of him as some radical, and he was murdered by the police.
Right.
And we were like, oh, thank God that terror threat is out of the way. Because he was on the the list of agitators, not quite terrorists, but agitators. So it was justified in like keeping tabs on him, following him. They tried to assassinate him once by planting a handgun in a cop car, so that they could put him in the car, shoot him, and then say he had a gun. And it was all okay because he was some leftist radical.
Right. So Tom, you're describing it. You literally just put it in the right focus. Those sidebar things keep us from looking at that which is the real issue. And I refuse, Dr. Joe, you said it earlier, to let this become the back page story, page 2. This has got to stay on page 1. It can't be, oh, everybody had their protest. Everybody, you know, put on their shirts and talked about George Floyd. This is much bigger than George Floyd's death. This is about culture change that's sustainable and that's going to be long-term, that ensures that all people are valued, that all people are treated the way that they should be treated. Someone said the other day, made a comment that, talking, it was a good conversation, but the person made a statement and they said, well, Black people just really want, they just want a fighting chance. And I was offended by that. A fighting chance for what? What are you talking about? You're trying to say that I want to be equal to you? No, I want to be the Black, beautiful woman that God designed me to be. I don't want to be in a melting pot. I want to be in a tossed salad. And when you eat a tossed salad, what do you taste? All the flavors of that salad, right? I want to be who I am, and I want to be valued for who I am and respected for what I am and who I am and what I bring to the table. And we get sidetracked, which is another example of not focusing on the true issues. That has gone on far too long. Racist comments from our leaders, far too long. We can go all the way back to the Nixon years, where Nixon made a comment, and I'm not going to make this political, but I'm just going to make this one point, where Nixon made a comment post, legislation as it relates to interracial relationships, but he made a comment in a conversation about abortion, and he said there are only two reasons. He said there were only two reasons when an abortion would be acceptable: when there was an actual offense of some sort, a sexual offense towards someone, or if it was an interracial couple. And this was in the 70s. Who says that's okay?
Classy.
Right? So are we in a different place now? No, we are not. We are still, it might show up differently. It's like, what do they say? Same sheet of music, same song, different sheet of music or something like that, whatever that statement is. And until people who do not look like me, who call themselves mainstream America, see that these are issues and are willing to make the true change, it's going to be the same. It cannot be that because a person has had an experience with one Black person, now all Black men are a certain thing or a certain way. That's wrong. Walking down the street and a Black man passes a white woman and she clutches her purse. A man out in the park bird watching and confronts a woman who's doing something that's not appropriate, and she goes into white fragility and picks up the phone and calls the police on the man. That man could have been dead in the park. Educated, solid, strong, professional man could have been dead in the park because she didn't want to put her dog on a leash, and suddenly she had fragility. Oh, come on, you guys. I just speak real, and I think, Dr. Joe, you wouldn't have invited me if you weren't ready for me. You know, it's important that we really speak the truth and deal with these issues. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to be in the same place in this country. No longer acceptable.
And I think people have to be able to look at themselves.
Yes.
It is so much more important to be reflective than reflexive. And it is more important to wonder than to worry.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's what the I am is about. I mean, Angela, you know, the I am is saying we're all valuable. That's what everybody wants. Mm-hmm. And at every and any moment in time, you can remind someone of their value.
That's right.
Whenever you remind someone of their value, you increase your own value.
Yes.
Every friend was once a stranger. Mm-hmm. We can have more friends. We can have a stronger group. We can have a nation, a culture, a world that works together. That's what we're about. Angela, we've got a few minutes left. The I am has two rules.
You know, I say one quick thing how we get there. It's really embracing what's known as, well, let me ask you all, do you all know the golden rule? What's the golden rule?
Do unto others.
As
you would have done unto you.
Unto you. You're in that equation. Take yourself out of the equation and it becomes the platinum rule. Do unto others as they want done unto them. That means I'm considerate of you and I'm considerate of all and less focused on me. Look out for me. That's important to do, but be considerate of all. And then we can see some positive change that happens in this country.
The platinum rule.
Yes.
So Angela, the IM has two rules. Small changes have big effects.
Absolutely.
Everything interconnects. What small change can you recommend to our listening audience that so they can move us closer to what we really need to do?
In the words of Beyonce, listen. You got to listen. It's time to really, really stop trying to solution set when someone is trying to share with you what the concerns are. Stop trying to defend yourself in the posture of, you know, someone saying to you, you've done this, you've done that, or these things need to change. Well, I donated to the NAACP. I've done this and I don't care about that. I don't need to hear that. I need you to hear me and understand what I'm trying to help you see to drive change. So listen and educate yourself. We have the internet, the world right at our fingertips. We got these little wonderful little keyboards. Take that keyboard and Google search. What is white privilege? What is microaggression? So I don't have to keep asking Angela. What does it mean to racial profile? What have I done that I can do differently?
So Angela, the second rule: you control no one, you influence everyone. You've got a few seconds. I'm sorry.
Yes.
What kind of influence do you want to be?
I want everything I say and everything I do to have positive impact on people and drive positive change in their lives. But they have to do the work. I'm just here to help.
Love it. And thank you so much for coming here tonight.
Thank you
so grateful.
I appreciate the invitation, Dr. Joe.
We'll be back next week with the Dr. Joe Show. Tom, Mark, good night.
Night.
We're still on.
Awesome.
So Ben's gone. So this is just great. But we, if you want to spend a few more minutes chatting on Facebook Live, we can do that. There's obviously so much more to talk about. I wonder, this just occurred to me, one of our previous guests a couple of years ago wrote a book on unconscious bias, white professor now at Northeastern. I wonder what it would be like to have both of you on. What do you think about that?
It'll be fun. I'll make it fun. I promise.
I have no doubt about that. But I'll give him a call. Jonathan Kahn is his name, and that may be just mind blowing. So this was just great, Angela. And was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't have a chance to? Because we're now still live on Facebook. Hi, everybody on Facebook. So this is sort of the extra content. Something else that you wanted to talk about?
Not nothing. I don't have anything specific. I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm open to whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. So, Mark, something on your mind?
Did you see me lean forward?
I did.
I don't know. Mark makes me nervous. Mark makes me nervous. I don't know where he's going to take me.
Why? Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's an implicit bias. Why should I be nervous?
Go ahead, Mark. What's on your mind?
One of the questions, one of the struggles I'm having with all of this, and you mentioned that the urgency is now. Post George Floyd, you see this sense of urgency. I'm sure it's always been urgent with you. This is your passion. This is what you've been, teaching and hopefully getting through to a lot of people. But where I'm struggling is the divide, right? How can it be perceived that you can't support Black Lives Matter and the police at the same time?
You can support.
And there's a lot of Black police.
Yeah,
right?
But it's not about Black police officers.
I know.
We should support the police. However, I challenge you all to go watch 13th if you haven't. The documentary, Ava DuVernay, she talks a lot about, the justice system and how it has been structured around hindrances, blockage, all of those things towards people of color. So it's about getting the structure right. It's not about being against the police, because guess what? We need the police. Someone breaks in my house right now, I need the police. I'm going to call them. So it's not about that. It's about those that are a part of certain police organizations who are operating incorrectly. It is a simple, nice way of saying it. So this is not about, in my mind, and it should not be about some divide. I'm either going to support Black Lives Matter or I'm going to support the police. It's not about that. It's about cleaning up and fixing the police while we are supporting Black Lives Matter.
But it's happening.
I know, but it has to be conversations like this, visible, depictions of how we do this well. That's why I say it to people all the time, because I've had some people who said, well, we should go, our company should go protest. I said, okay, what's your why? Now, if we're going to go out and protest, that's fine, but we have to know our why, which means our why is going to give us a plan. It's going to give an actionable plan to deal with the actual issues that we're out there protesting about. So, Mark, that visibility needs to happen with the thought process of a simultaneous effort of maintaining support for Black Lives Matter while we reform, abolish, whatever terms people want to use today to deal with these issues within the police and within the police force.
But what's happening right now is so aggressive that I feel like we're potentially setting ourselves up for a real problem if good police officers, right? Because we can agree that there are certainly a lot of really good, and it's a small fraction, percent of a percent that are putting it in this situation. But those
it's their responsibility to address it, though.
But what, the language, right? The divisive language, defund, right? Get rid of. You're going to, it's going to be this self-fulfilling prophecy that all of these folks that are good cops, educated, got their degrees, they they've got leadership roles, but they're closing in on retirement, they're going to say, I'm all set. And I can't imagine that there's kids in high school and college right now that are saying, I want to go be a police officer and serve and protect. No, I don't, because I don't want to go in and be hated. And the only people that would want to be hated are sociopaths. So you're going to have that fraction of 1% of police officers that are doing really atrociously bad things. That's going to be the entire police force, because those will be the only ones that will remain if we can't get these conversations to be more.
I think the change of the narrative rests on the shoulders of those in control of the police and which would be the justice system. I think they have to do the work. It's just the same as what Dr. Joe just talked about. Influencing change. You know, I can be a voice. I'm a lone only voice, me and my little self. If I, want to say certain things, that doesn't matter if the effort isn't happening on the other side of the table to actually implement true, sustainable change. I think the terms, you're right, are becoming more and more aggressive, and people are not looking at the flip side of it is of if we do take away funding, what's going to happen when we have scenarios where police officers are absolutely needed. That is why people are saying that the reform, the abolishment, all of these things need to happen. I think people are just using the wrong terms and being aggressive in the wrong way. So it's about coaching those who are leading these efforts. And it goes back to that fake media piece too, you guys. It also goes back to that which is posted. And I think you guys even talked about that a little bit in that conversation that I watched. I call it the toilet paper conversation, Joe. That's the only way I can remember it. I'm sorry. But I think it's even in that, how things are being depicted in the media, and whether we are still playing into that, or are we finding that which is the truth? Where's the truth, and where's the opportunity for true change? And if people are truly behind the scenes working this as they should be, then the noise will go away. You got to learn to weed out the noise. When we take away all of the noise, what's left there? The facts and the opportunities. And that is where the work needs to take place. Right now, it's still just noise, and it's going to keep landing on page 2. It was on page 1, obviously, Joe, like you said, it's on page 2 now, but it's still just noise. To get it back on the front page in the right way, weed out that noise and get down to that factual opportunity for true change.
I mean, that is part of why I wanted you here, because I want to keep this on page 1, but this just sort of popped into my head. Can we actually affect change easier if it is page 2? I mean, are we going to meet more resistance if it's on page 1? Or if we're slowly, quietly, but purposefully creating change and making sure
how in the world, Joe, I'm sorry, how in the world can we go slow? We've been going slow for 100 years.
That's how we got here.
That's why we're here where we are now.
Fair enough.
This cannot go back to the cannot.
I agree, and I'm again, I'm just free associating, but putting my shrinky psychiatry hat on for a moment.
Okay.
I'm thinking about human nature.
Mm-hmm.
The concern that I think we need to address is the resistance, and resistance to change is in part because people fear that they somehow will have less value. And this gets to the root, I think, of who we are as human beings. If we all want to feel valuable, but somebody says you're doing something wrong, which they may be, and they are, there's no question about it. I mean, Angela, when you commented on what I had said in that group, I didn't say, I didn't have resistance. I heard it, and I recognized, because that's part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know in my work as a psychiatrist that the resistance is because people are afraid that if you know them, they will be seen as less valuable.
So Joe, Dr. Joe, you're speaking to that the levels of visible and invisible resistance to the needed change.
Yeah.
We got that which is visible, that top layer. We know we need to do some things different. We know You know, we need more information. We've got to educate ourselves. That's at the top. We got to dig deeper and go down into that most deepest level. But before we get to the deepest, we have that level 2. I don't know if you recall when I talked about all of this, that loss of status, right? I'm made to feel incompetent. That's what people are feeling right now, right? So when you hear these people talk about, I feel guilty, I feel this, I'm sitting in this space of I don't know what to do. You're feeling all of that because you now have hit that invisible level under the iceberg, which is that level 2 of really knowing that, okay, that means my status, which has been built on the backs of injustice and wrong towards others, I'm going to lose that. Someone said to me in a meeting, Angela, I finally see it. I get it. I understand it. I've lived in white privilege, and I must admit that I liked it. I've enjoyed my white privilege. And so what you're speaking to, Dr. Joe, is that level where they're actually losing that imaginary, well, it's not even imaginary because it's real for some of us for sure, that status that they've created for themselves. And that then requires you to go even deeper. You got to hit that bottom layer, which takes you to that ingrained structure. Where were you born? What are your family experiences? Your friends, Tom, we talked about that a minute ago. What's going on with my friends? Some of them may need to go if they are not willing to get on board with us really trying to make this change happen. And then you become that change agent, but you are really deep at that point. And when you get that deep, that's the hard work. And that's what people don't want to do because you lived a certain way for so long and you live your lives with blinders on. So you don't see Angela when she walks in the room. Now, you ignore Angela when she walks in the room. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but, not a but it doesn't even seem that hard. It's a reframing is all it is. It's not that you're giving something up.
We could be friends, Tom. But
anytime.
The world could only take that simplistic approach. That is why I take a very simplistic approach with the work that I do. Do I have the textbook? Do I have the formal education? Do I know and understand all of see, I can't even think of what it is. That's how unimportant it is to me. All of the anti-racism models and all of these formal things that I had to learn so everybody thought I was valuable. That's not important. I teach on an 8th grade level. And when I tell you people get more out of that, me intentionally, so that people can get the simplistic approach. I gave you all my model just a few minutes ago. The first thing in the model, the L, listen. How much more simple can that be? If you would just listen and understand, comprehend, and then educate yourself.
And I think the resistance is where the hurt comes from. Because if someone says to me, you have white privilege, I just say, oh, cool. Let's get you some. All right. Like, it's weird. It's trying. No, really. It's like trying to.
Wait, Tom. We're not friends again, and we're done. I don't know.
No, exactly what I meant. Let's elevate. Not everyone on the same level. Like you said, you want to be a tossed salad. But people feel like that they have to self-deprecate or you like we know these people who are. Where the guilt overcomes their responsibility. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you can't sit in that seat of guilt, right? When we talk about change and we look at, change models, and you look at that change curve and people end up in that deep seat of that curve and they sit there and want to stay there in that guilt and that discomfort and all. You got to come out of that and figure out, okay, what do I need to do differently now? If that means I'm going to now say that I'm an ally for change, ally for the Black community, what does that mean for you? And that's going to be different for each and every person. And that's not to devalue yourself, which I think is where you're going with that. This isn't about you devaluing yourself as a white person. It's fine. Be who you are. Drive what you drive. Live where you live your life. But now you're going to invoke the platinum rule and you're going to think about other people. And think about a population of people that have been mistreated and marginalized. I use the example of my son all the time, and one of my sisters and I laugh all the time and say, "Does he know you talk about him that much?" He knows now because he's been here, so he'll hear me talking when I'm doing trainings. What you all think and feel and experience if you have a child like my son, who's a 21-year-old recent graduate of UMass Amherst. My experience and when my son walks out the door is very different than your experience when your son walks out the door. Yep. When my son walks out the door, I have consistently, since he's been able to do it on his own, go out and drive or go with friends. The one thing I always say to him, and he knows it, I said, either I'll text him or I said, be safe, son. He knows what that means. He knows that's beyond drive your car safe and be safe. No, that means come home. That means make sure you are aware of everything that's going on. And I'm praying the whole time my child is gone. He's a grown man now, but I still know he's in a window and in a skin. He's in the skin that he's in, and I know what his experiences can potentially be like, and he may not come home. And that's a sad commentary, but it's the truth. And the three of you, if you have a son, 21 years old, you likely don't have to even think about that, other than making sure they're being safe in their driving.
No, and that's true. And that's why, chatting with you, listening to you, talking with you, hearing what Kenny was saying, what Nancy was saying, was not only eye-opening and mind-blowing, but humbling, because I thought, why didn't I know that before? What was going on with me that I didn't know? And not to make it about me, but we have to. It has to be about.
Give me an example, Dr. Joe. What do you mean? Why didn't you know? What do you mean?
Because when Kenny said, listen, man, if you get pulled over by the cops, it's a different experience than if I get pulled over by the cops. It's like, whoa. Yeah. And that was like, talk about denial, like I said, denial is not just a river in Egypt, in psychiatry. This was really important.
It is. And I had a woman say to me recently, Angela, this is hard for me. I'm really processing this because we had a Black president and I thought we were okay. And she was so serious when she said that. And I didn't devalue her, Thomas. I didn't say, really? No, I didn't do that. I said, I hear your heart. And I appreciate the fact that you are acknowledging that we are not in a good place. Even after having a Black president for this country, we are still not in a good place. And she never thought about all of the little things that have happened in her own life and her blinders that she's had on for years until right now. And I'm trying my best to educate and give people that kind of information to really just make you think. And when you have that thoughtful process, as I said, you can start dealing with this stuff in the right way from the heart and have that compassion that's needed for true change.
Yeah. Well, let's make it happen. Small changes have big effects. I hope that this small change, folks, having Angela Callahan on our show, will have an influence on everyone. So let's make sure that happens.
I want to have her back.
Would love to have you back. All right.
To come back. You guys make me the fourth host on here, and then
there you go.
You add a little nice little pretty color.
Sounds good to me. Okay, hi, folks. We are going to say goodnight. And everybody, the Dr. Joe Show, thanks for tuning in. Angela.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Angela.
Bye.
See you, Tom. See you, Joe.